Now, ladies and gentlemen, moving on ahead with the final panel discussion on the topic of rural futures, water and sanitization. And the objective is to focus on traditional models of accessing water in the Eastern Himalayas and leveraging this knowledge to develop efficient systems. And to chair this session, may I please invite on stage Mr. Rituraj Phukan, the Chief Operating Officer at Walk for Water, and I invite him onto the stage so he can lead us in the dialogue for today's evening. And ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you a little about Mr. Rituraj Phukan, who is trained as a climate reality leader under Nobel laureate Al Gore and as a mentor and presenter with the Climate Reality Project headed by the former US Vice President, a grassroots conversationist. He works with Green Card Nature Organization and initiatives like the Sanctuary Asia Kids for Tiger program. And ladies and gentlemen, I extend and good if I may extend a heartfelt of thanks to Mr. Phukan for being here with us this evening and gracing us this occasion. So ladies and gentlemen, with a huge and a thundering round of applause, please welcome Mr. Rituraj Phukan. Okay. All right. I think Mr. Rituraj Phukan is on his way. I would like to call the other panelists on the stage. May I please invite Mohammed Maksudur Rahman, Bangladesh Environment and Development Society, Bangladesh, to please join us on stage. I request Lieutenant General Arun Kumar Sahni from India. He's already here with us. All right, so here we have Mr. Ranjit Bhattacharya to preside over the sessions ahead.
Good subject, water. I think everything around us is water. 3/4 of the world is water, and within the 1/3 that is there, meaning more than 50% is water. So I think what's fascinating about the subject of water is that we have been sort of really murdering water. And without water, Earth and life on Earth would be completely challenged. So I think it's very important to understand that at Balipara Foundation, because we realized water was so important, we created a book, and it was called Water, Managing Water, and Reflections on Managing Water. And what we found, it was really a big challenge when people said water, we're going to run short, there'll be water wars. Those are all may be true. But the way water happens because of precipitation. And that precipitation is from the sea. And then that gets blown in, and then it gets into all the water bodies that are there. The water bodies being snow lines, being glaciers, being water itself, and groundwater. And then there is this whole humidity which surrounds it. So those are the real components of water. And what we found is that water is not short, but water is being challenged. Because the total quantum of water from 3 billion years ago till now, they haven't measured 3 billion years ago, but at least from the scientific backdrop of from when they talk about what is called temperature up, humidity down, etc., they find that basically that water has never gone down. So you won't find, if at all, water has gone up, the sea level, etc., etc. But that the content is the same because glacial melts are happening, water from rivers are maybe going down. But the total water quantity is not less. So, if somebody went away from this conference, the one thing I would like to assure you that water is not short. What is really happening is we're contaminating water. Let's just take India, it's easier. India is a good beating boy for anything bad, so might as well use it. So I'm saying we look at our urban areas. Our urban areas are completely misquandered. There is no way by which you can actually say that water is not short in these urban areas, primarily because the water sources which are outside the city or inside the city, including what they call aquifers from below. So, you have these digging bore wells, etc., are actually being completely destroyed. And one of the biggest two diseases that there are in a place like Assam, and I'm just switching from the urban areas, is there's a thing called fluoride and arsenic. Fluoride and arsenic have started challenging the entire aquifer management, which is possible. Is very true in Bangladesh also, where there's water everywhere, and yet not a drop to drink. So the urban areas have a different type of challenge, and the rural areas have a different type of challenge. But in both cases, it's quite poisonous. The best example on the good side of a turnaround is Chennai. What Chennai did many years ago, much before MGR also, they made it compulsory for all buildings to have their own water. You can't build a building unless you have your own water, one. Two, whatever you took from the ground, you had to put it back in it. And they said you had to do rainwater harvesting as a round the clock, around the year activity, because rains were there for only 1 month or 2 months. But how do we make sure that is there? So I think this water, with this as a backdrop, I think our biggest challenge will be water conversion. The scientific way or technological way post-industrial revolution is desalination plants and humidifiers. So from the humidity, you can convert water and make that happen and it flows in, which is quite a scientific way and a successful ways. Richard can talk about that later. But the reality is that it's some time off before that becomes a mass product. It's almost like solar becoming the mass product right now. So I think it is very important to understand that can this water situation be rectified? Very good to say that, say, Chennai is on that course of rectification. Is it corrected? No. I think our cities must be able to do that. In terms of our rural areas, and I can speak of Assam, there is just nothing, there's no discussion on arsenic and fluoride. And that is going to just poison the whole state of water. And then to recover from both of these is something which is almost impossible. So I think the mechanisms that really need to change is from the water available in states which are water surplus, is actually to correct their groundwater aquifer management business. So I think with that, maybe I'll ask the original chairman to take over and I'll go and take my seat if you introduce all of them. I was just holding up for you.
Hello. Yeah. Thank you, Ranjita. First of all, let me introduce the distinguished panelists that we have here. Is that? Okay. So we have Mohammed Maksudur Rahman, who founded the Bangladesh Environment and Development Society, BEDS, in 2010 for solving the integrated environmental and socio-economic problems like global warming and sea level rise, unsustainable use of natural resources, drinking water crisis, Sundarbans biodiversity destruction, human rights violation, increasing uses of dirty energy, gender inequity, etc., for promoting ecological balance and create harmony between humans and the environment. Within a very short time, BEDS has become a reputed organization among the communities and government agencies by doing few remarkable jobs on the environment and development sectors in the Sundarbans coastal region under Mr. Rahman's capable leadership. Now it's a great honor to introduce Lieutenant General Arun Kumar Sahni. Yeah, but I have a paper that I would like to read out, what's all the information that's here. Lieutenant General Arun Kumar Sahni is a decorated scholar soldier with 40 years of commissioned service in the Indian Army. Contributing to the youth who will eventually lead our country has been a cause that is close to his heart. He has been an instructor at various military institutions within the country, and he has actively participated and spoken at various seminars, conclaves, and prestigious institutions, academic establishments such as CII and YPO on diverse subjects. He aspires to contribute meaningfully to all levels of society through experience sharing and formal interface at the operational, directional, and strategic level with all kinds of organizations. He is mentoring startups and new initiatives that are in the domain of information security, cyber, and HR management. He is an active participant with various think tanks within the country on a wide range of subjects, particularly relating to issues of security and conflict management. Yeah, so I have a small PowerPoint presentation that is kind of going to put in perspective of the problem that we face. So I'll just stand up so that I can have a look at it myself. Yeah, water, water everywhere, nor any drop to drink. This immortal verse from Samuel Taylor Coleridge, although written in a very different context, has come true for communities around the world on the blue planet. Next, please. As water emerges as the local issue of global climate change. And it's not just for people, also for biodiversity. Next. So nearly 40% of the world's population is affected by water scarcity. Next, please. And India is unfortunately one of the countries that is overpumping the underground aquifers. Next, please. Some of these figures are really astounding. If you see here in northern Gujarat, the water tables are falling by 20 feet per year, which is just hard to, understand. In Tamil Nadu, 95% of wells supplying small farmers have kind of dried up. Next, please. So India faces a huge underground water crisis, and it is getting worsened because of salinization. Next, please. Wetlands have shrunk and rivers have dried. And Maharashtra, we all know about how many farmers have been committing suicide. And the projections are not good either. 50% of India is likely to face highly or extremely high water stress in the next few years. Next, please. We all know about the farmers committing suicide. The numbers are really incredible. 300,000 is something that I heard earlier this morning. Next, please. This is the news from yesterday. 20,000 Maharashtra villages may soon run out of water, staring at drought-like conditions. So this is an update. And incredibly, we all know about the Kerala floods, but most of South India was actually suffering from a drought during the same time. Next, please. These are reports based on the Niti Aayog report that came out in June this year, the integrated water management report that came out. So this is supposed to be the worst ever crisis in India's history. Please don't come to Shimla. This is what the locals are telling us because of the water crisis. This year, for the first time, some governments, in fact, during the festival of Holi, some governments advised the people not to play with water, such as the crisis. Next, please. This is the part of the report. As you can see, the various states have been ranked on different parameters. The indicators considered include groundwater restoration, irrigation management, on-farm water use, drinking water supply, and water policy frameworks. As you see, very few states, in fact, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, and Andhra Pradesh have actually got some high scores, high performance, and the rest of it, including most of Northeast India, is well below par. Next, please. So some of the incredible things from that report were that by 2030, the country's water demand is projected to be twice of the supply, and over 600 million people already face extremely high water stress in India. Next, please. Okay, this is another report that says the SDGs that we aspire to reach by 2030 are very unlikely because the Ganga Valley is facing this drying up. The water is drying up in the Ganga Valley. So Ganga and Brahmaputra, this is what we are concerned about, India and Bangladesh. So we'll talk about it later. Next, please. This was another report where they say that water wars will break out. And if you read right at the bottom, the Ganga Brahmaputra Valley is one of the areas that is likely to face stress over water. Next. This is the map. Again, this was just earlier this month, in the second week of October. As you can see, the Ganga Brahmaputra Valley is in red. So this is what we will be focusing on hopefully today. Next, please. Just to reiterate the earlier points, this includes what are the hotspots, and this includes the Nile, Ganga, Brahmaputra, Indus, Tigris, Euphrates, and Colorado rivers. So these are the areas that are likely to see the stress. The IPCC report itself, the newest report also says that most of the Himalayan glaciers could lose one-third and one-half of their mass by 2100. So that's going to add to the problem. Next, please. Yeah, so there are other issues with water. One is overuse. Next, uh, water scarcity made worse by thefts. These are just some headlines that I got. Wastage. India is wasting 40%, 40 to 50% of supplied water. So we know there are the solutions. This is something that I work with Walk for Water. We have set up about 8,700 of these community water centers. Even some other organizations are setting up these community water centers, which takes any kind of available water and makes them, fit for consumption. Next, please. And gives them to the villagers at very cheap rates. Here, if you give something for free, it is never good. But you charge a minimal price, it becomes useful for the villagers to operate these systems. These are something that again we are likely to see more and more often. Water ATMs. We promote some local entrepreneurship through them as well. Rainwater. This is something we'd like to talk about. Maybe Lieutenant General Sahni could also advise us on how we can make this take this up on a war footing, being a commander of the Indian Army, because every drop counts. Next, please. I think we are about to end. This is a tweet that Mr. Modi made very recently, and now he has actually also woken up to the the water crisis, and then concentrating. He has said that everybody come and visit Porbandar in Gujarat, because they have done a very good job at managing the available water sources. Next, please. Yeah, so I end this brief perspective on the water crisis with another shot of the blue planet. And I look up to the eminent panelists to discuss the available solutions. The perspective from Bangladesh is what we'll look at first. And then we'll ask Colonel Sahni to take up some of the solutions available. Thank you.
So thank you very much. Basically, I would like to explain a few background information about the water crisis in Bangladesh. Still, we are well known the water crisis. Basically, I would like to just address Mr. Ranjit. He mentioned that we have the enough water, but we have not the sufficient, that means not the safe drinking water. We don't have the agriculture water like that. So in Bangladesh, in the coastal regions, I would like to say that the coastal regions in the area, the people basically depends on the rainwater for their drinking purposes and also the agriculture purposes. Because the groundwater also saline, and due to the climate change, also the salinity also increasing day by day. In 1980, the people saved the rainwater. They just digging the pond and save the rainwater for the drinking purposes. But after 1980, the shrimp cultivation introduced in the coastal region of Bangladesh. So the peoples are too much interested to shrimp cultivation. So the pond, the peoples preserve the rainwater. So few of the ponds engaged. That means the people introduced under the shrimp cultivation. So that's why they face more drinking water problems in that area. And they try to preserve the rainwater in their small pot or other issues. And a few of the NGOs also provided the different system. That means how they can preserve the rainwater. And nowadays, also the few of the organization companies also introduced the desalination system. This is the scenario in that area, and the peoples also basically the female have the duty to collect the water for their family. So sometimes the female spend, I think, the 6 hours, sometimes 3 hours, and much more. Early in the morning, they go to the long distance for collecting the water. They use the boat, and they go to that long distance, and they collect you can imagine like a 3 or 4 picture. Do you understand? The picture is small. Reservoir. So, and basically the dry season is this crisis is too much. Basically, they preserve the rainwater, but in the summer season, most of the pond also dry, and they are using the dirty water for the drinking purpose. If you have any experience to visit the coastal area, then I think you can realize the situation. So now we are talking the safe drinking water, and that peoples are now talking the drinking water, not safe. So we can erase the word the safe. Only the drinking water is good for them. They are searching the drinking water. And the desalination system. And for this situation, few of the company like to introduce the desalination system, and also I would like to sell the water to the people. It's very cheap rate. This is a good, but in our opinion, in my my personal view, the desalination system is not good for the environment. Basically, when they produce or they desalinate the water, they destroy actually the 5 or 7 liter water for 1 liter water. And after desalination, they discharge the water into the ground place, and that area also must affected for increasing the salinity drastically. So in previous time, we found that that area, the people produce few of the production, but nowadays, surrounding the desalination system, the people cannot cultivate any kind of crops. And this is the thing. So actually, we are fighting for solving this drinking water crisis, and we feel that the rainwater is the one good thing that we can solve this problem. So from our initiatives, we re-excavate few ponds, and we introduce a few local water purification system that I already presented in my last presentation, that we use the local ingredient, that means the coal, and also the stone, and also sand, and also use the solar energy for desalinate the rainwater. Because when we preserve the water, then few water also a little bit contaminated by the surrounding water, so we desalinate and we also distribute this water. And also the others filter system, we can filter the water for using the muddy made filter, and we can filter. And the local people also use the I forgot the English word, that means the pitkiri. Pitkiri, yes. Alum, yes. The people also use for purified their water. This is the local technology that we can solve the drinking water. But up to now, I don't know what's the good way, what's the good solution for solving this problem. Actually, this is the biggest crisis for the people. And not only the drinking water, but also we are little by little we are facing the agriculture sector on the for cultivating the for production for water. So water, I think, is the biggest issues in our coming days. So together we need to discuss more and more how we can solve this kind of problems. So thank you very much.
Obviously, India and Bangladesh face a lot of common issues. As you pointed out, salinization is one problem, and then drying up of wetlands, water bodies during the dry season is another problem that we share. And then we also share the same resources, the Indo-Ganga, Brahmaputra systems. Moving on to Lieutenant General Sahni, sir, could we have your perspectives on this great crisis that seems to have hit us out of nowhere?
No, I think this is all man-made. The challenges to water are some due to climate change, some due to natural calamities and natural processes that have happened. But the problem that we have created is undoubtedly because of our bad management and human interference in the logical, natural processes that existed. So I'll come to that a little later. But let me just share one or two things, which is very important for the Northeast, which generally happens. The Brahmaputra, which seems to be the lifeline, which is the lifeline for this part of the world, and including at Bangladesh, let me tell you, the Sangpo, with all those projects that are happening, is not really going to impact us in that manner. An assessment carried out by the water, the governmental agency that looks at water resources that exist in this country, they said about 10% of the water resources, really speaking, come from the Sangpo into the Brahmaputra. The remainder, because we are on the this side of the watershed, the water and the rain that falls this side is what really supplements 90% of the water content as far as the Brahmaputra is concerned. So this bogey that happens all over the place, that with China making all these major projects on the Sangpo, I'm sorry, the Northeast is going to run dry and Bangladesh is going to be suddenly on the roadside. I don't think that's true. So I think that's a fallacy that needs to be addressed. But this is one issue. The second issue, which is very critical and which is what is really making a difference, is that this climate change has had an impact. If you see the Himalayan range, if it gets snow between the months of December to the first half of January, is what really solidifies and provides us the water throughout the year into the rivers. Unfortunately, with this sudden shift in global temperatures, and we're finding this weather change that is happening, we do get, like when I was in Kashmir, we were serving there, you had snow which came in as late as the middle of February. But I'm sorry, that snow that lands there may have been quantifiably in the same manner as what would have come throughout the winter season. But I'm sorry, that snow does not supplement the water requirements as far as India is concerned. So that is the second issue that you have to be clear, that there is a change in weather patterns, and this is something which you have no control with global warming. And if we are going to go as per the IPCC report to 1.5 and 2 degrees, you'll actually see a greater shift. And this would create problems on the glaciers, and the glaciers which provide these rivers will get affected. So there would be a restriction on the kind of water availability. The good point and the good story is that the awareness levels, and Narmada is one of the best examples that we have today in our country. With this great drive for the last 5 years to plant trees along that area, to stop dirting that thing, the Narmada, which only comes from the hills and is based on the vegetation that is along its river path, has grown and become better in the last few years than it's gone backwards. So human efforts to try and redeem and sort out where the human interference problems have happened can be arrested if we are conscious of what we want to do. Coming now on to the issue really looking at, we have to understand the Eastern Himalayas is the resource bank or is the recharge area for the rest of the country. Whatever comes in there gets recharged and provides the water levels right along the till it comes to the valley floor. And this is what makes a difference. And something what was said by the keynote speaker, that if you go through an organic system where chemicals are not utilized, you suddenly find that the moisture content in the soil goes up. When the moisture content goes up, then you'll actually automatically see the requirement of water for your agricultural processes and produce, and the output will actually improve. So somewhere down the line, which we cannot do in urban areas, but which we can do in the rural areas, not to arrest the free flow of natural drainage that exists. Because this natural drainage automatically recharges whatever is the aquifers that exist as nature has provided it in that region. The reason why we had the problems in Kedarnath was because unstructured growth led to sudden collapses. And this is what is happening today in the Eastern Himalayas. As more and more border infrastructure is being created, as more and more roads are being created, before I come to that, the good part is that sedimentary rock structure allows certain amount of permeation of this water. And that's why the springs and the streams and the ponds that existed in the higher reaches remained charged throughout the year. And villages and habitations came around it. With this new construction that we are doing along the borders, and I can say it because I can see it in the whole of Arunachal, which I saw here while I was serving, that some of our military camps had to be relocated because you've created roads, you've created structures, so you've either arrested by default the natural flow, or you have disrupted the sedimentary rock structure that existed at that particular area, so the water systems that used to recharge that area have got arrested. So I think we'll have to be very conscious in the progress of looking after and developing our border areas, our watershed areas, to ensure that we do not arrest the free flow of existing springs, streams, and ponds that they exist. And if you've seen, I think it was again mentioned by the keynote speaker in the morning, that today in the southern India, there have been great efforts in some of the parts of the country to recharge and reactivate the ponds. If I come in from Rajasthan, where you have so much of dry season and hot temperatures, the tankas are the one which provides water throughout the year. So they've created these natural flowing areas where the water is always available throughout. And it's the most precious resource. And when we as army people go into training out there, one of the greatest challenges is to make sure that you don't get in and spoil the tankas, because that's the habitation, that whole area is dependent on it. So I think our man-made interference with the free-flowing systems is one area where we should really seriously look at. The second issue which I would like to mention here is which I've actually become as I say, a strong propagator of this organic system or the natural methodology of rehabilitation of land, because as I was telling you, when the governor of Himachal mentioned about this place in Kurukshetra, where 50 hectares of land has actually been turned over in 3 years to become from infertile and regenerated with natural resources to be able to again start being a producing area in the same manner as what the remainder of the land is. I think that's the answer that we will have to look at for ourselves in various areas of villages where desertification has happened, where salination has happened in the environment. Maybe there are better ways to look after and regenerate this resource as far as we are concerned. And the third thing, which I think again was mentioned in the morning, which I would like to highlight, just to share, a hectare of land which produces the best basmati in Punjab requires 3,000 liters of water for that crop to be sort of from the start till the time you harvest it. But when you do it in the coastal areas, you require no drop of water, which has to be taken from your underwater resources. So the green revolution, which started off as a great idea for India, needs to be rechecked with policy initiatives to ensure that you grow the right crop in the right environment instead of growing the wrong tree. I remember I had farmlands in Haryana. Eucalyptus was the best thing that happened in the 60s. So everybody planted eucalyptus, and we suddenly found that the water table went. So the eucalyptus has gone out of Punjab and Haryana, and you suddenly then again you've got the poplar which has come up, which allows you to sort of give you the greenery, give you the precipitation, give you the space to grow your plants and your harvesting for about 7 years. And that goes into the match industry and other areas of utilization. So I think we've learned a lot in the last 70 years. We know where we have gone wrong. The problems of Bombay will always remain. That Methi River cannot ever be sorted out. I'm sorry, it can't be done. So you'll always have floods. You'll always have that problem. You need to just get a better drainage system so that there are not too many people who are affected. But I think out in the rural areas, out in the tier 2, tier 3 cities, which are likely to become more urban centers as time goes by, there I think care and has to be really looked at in the methodology of your development of infrastructure so that you don't do it. And this is where I think the social scientists and the people who are experts in this field need to be dovetailed in urban planning and town planning, which has not been happening. You only go to them for a water connection, but you don't go for them for getting your plans cleared for the areas that have to be developed for urbanization or for residential purposes. And the last thing that I would like to share with you is, I've seen it happening, most of us within the army, and I quite like what Maharashtra has done. As I said, it's an afterthought. Thermal power plants can only take water which is untreated water from sewage treatment plants. They cannot take groundwater for any of the thing. It's a policy direction that has been given. So I think we will have to be very aggressive in the kind of policies we want to implement if we want to ensure that the ground recharge happens and it does not get violated or misused just because it's easily available. I think cities like Delhi have stopped. You can't start making your own subterranean, dig in your own tube wells to sort of throw water up, though it happens because maybe because of bribery and corruption, that it still continues to happen, but you're not authorized to do it based on the system that exists today. So I would leave in my first opening thing just to say there is a problem as far as climate changes are happening. We have to get conscious of it. There are methodologies by which regeneration can happen of the land and of the capacity of the soil to be able to have more moisture. We need to look at it. The third thing is, I think, which is related to the way of life. And for this, I want to share it because it's a large audience from the Northeast. In Kashmir, they have a great system. Hill villages have. The biggest problem is for the upper village, if he does, for him, he might get clean drinking water. But if he washes his utensils and other things that he does in the water there, the guy down below is actually going to get contaminated water. So in Kashmir Valley, which is one of the most beautiful things that they've done, is all villages which are there, there are two streams which have been taken away from the natural streams that run, of water that run through rivulets. One goes from the upper northern edge of the river, the other goes from the southern edge of the village, sorry. So the upper edge one is only utilized for drinking by all villages. So you have to wash anything, it is only in the lower rivulet. And this somehow has been a system which has been there in the valley. So if you go along complete from Srinagar and get towards Trackball or go towards the Pakistan border, or the POK occupied border, or if you go towards Kupwara, Handwara and that side, you will find that all the upper reaches have these two rivulets which flow around, which is a great thing to be able to do in an undulating country. And I think a large portion of Arunachal, a large portion of the portions of Assam, areas of Nagaland, Manipur and Mizoram, where you have people living in the hills at different levels of thing, you could form a system like this, which is not very difficult. It has been done with local enterprise and seems to have now become a way of life and culture as far as the Kashmir Valley is concerned. It functions like that. So that's an area where we could look at for getting more clean water. I mean, it doesn't apply to Bangladesh because they're going to be flats. So this problem may be very, very different. So there you'll have to look at different ways. But I think this is how we could look at within our own country of how to become a little more proactive towards this problem. Thank you very much.
To Lieutenant General Sahni. Just to add to the climate change matters that we discussed now, there's two things that came to my mind, which has a lot of implications for the India-Bangladesh region. Number one is the accelerated melting of the Himalayan glaciers. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember reading somewhere that about 30% of the volume of water that flows down the Himalayan rivers is because of the glacial melting. So what are the implications in the short term in terms of more flooding, more riverbank erosion, and in the long term of seasonal scarcity? And number two, there was a recent report about Arctic sea ice melting and how it's going to disrupt the Indian monsoons. So that has got huge implications for not just for India, for Bangladesh as well. So these are two maybe questions that you could both address, starting with Mr. Rahman.
Actually, I also involved on a study that's very much related with water. That means the transboundary river study. Basically, we have 57 transboundary river in Bangladesh. 54 we are sharing with India. And most of the rivers, mainly, actually we are the downstream. I'm sorry to say that India is the upper stream. So when I conducted my study, then sometimes I took the picture. It's like my leg is one side of the river and another leg is another side of the river. That means basically most of the river controlled by the Indian government. It's a long political issues, and a long time we are negotiating with India. That's about the water rights, about the river rights issues. We hope we'll be solve these problems very soon. And during the monsoon time, basically, suddenly our side is flooded due to they opened the gate, and few of our northern part is drastically flooded, inundated, and also the people's human lives is also destroyed sometimes. So this is the issues that we think to discuss, we think to negotiate how we can solve these kind of issues. As one time, so when I conducted my study, then I also decided that at least we need a signal. So that's mean the gate will be open and will be flooded. So we have the time to our preparation time. So this is the one way that we can solve. And I think we will be solve these problems more after more negotiation. Thank you very much.
I think what we spoke in the previous session about an attitudinal change and an awareness to you changing your lifestyle. I'll just give you an example. I think I was reading somewhere sometime back. I think per individual use of water is about 420 liters in the United States of America. Whereas when we come back to India, we were somewhere in the range of about 80 liters when they looked at per individual use. And this includes the cars and the machines and everything that goes when you look at the population. Because of our large population, we might be the third most stressed state as far as water resources are concerned, or clean water or drinking water is concerned. Not water per se, but clean drinking fresh water. So that's the area where you're going to have concern. So what is the way that can happen? I mean, just to give an example, most of us in our military training, when we go through for our exercises, we give 10 liters for the vehicles, A vehicles, those are 40-ton vehicles which are required to do a 1 day's job. 10 liters of water keeps the engine going at the right level. We carry 5 liters per head for every man, and that's enough. So when you're looking at, and if you've got a great supply coming, then you scale it at about 20 liters per individual, and you can survive. There are villages which are living maybe on less of that. So I think one that has to happen as part of our education system, this water conservation. Policies to ensure where rainwater harvesting, as he said, has become requirement today as far as all construction activities in Bombay is concerned or in big cities are concerned. So you'll have to start looking at policy decisions that will come in into that manner of functioning. So if you're looking at this, so one is at the policy level, one is changing the awareness level. Third, I think, this capability of looking at forestation, where there is a large amount of local streams and water bodies, the capacity of the earth to have retain moisture, the ponds that exist in various parts of the area to retain water which comes from the rain. And of course, in Delhi, they say that please don't take the first rainfall water because that may be more poisonous than the arsenic that you might consume because of the pollution levels. But the answer is that there has to be a sincere effort today to start conserving this issue. Look at all the roads that get blocked in India today, including Guwahati. Why can't we just have these recharging aquifers deep down borings right next to these low-lying areas under all these flyovers so that the water recharges the lower shelf, instead of it just lying around there and people getting drenched and creating enough confusion. Then you consume more water to clean yourself after that. So I think if you can stop. So I think it's a way of life, an education system. Let's be a little more conscious about our infrastructure development. And I think it's a reality that there is warming that is going to happen. And if warming that is going to happen and there is going to be, as you said, if 2 degrees today, a change which they're envisaging might happen as per the report would be, is taken to be about 5 degrees centigrade change as far as the Arctic is concerned. So this melting of glaciers at the speed and the water resources, the icebergs in these areas, you'll find it's going to be at a much faster pace. There is going to be a loss. So I think we just need to get our act together of being conscious that it is here. If World Earth Day is every time seems to go forward by 1 more day, and from mid-August to say about 13th of August was it this year, then I think we need to get a little concerned. Nobody talks about it. It's just a small thing in the being World Earth Day. And now we've just crossed it on 13th of August. Thank you very much. What does it mean to the people? Really, nobody knows about it. And till I actually didn't get involved with the environmental groups, I actually had no clue what World Earth Day was. So I think our education system, it's the overshoot day. I mean, that's what they're saying. You've overshot the whole. So, I mean, we're really not aware of it. So I think maybe get a little more conscious, change the perceptions, change the mind. And this is where you use technology, you use these capacities of engagements, audio visuals, and I think YouTube, you've got Googles and everything else in the world to be able to try and engage on the social platform. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Sahni. There is another thing that we probably should address when we talk about water. In Hindi, there is a saying, "Jungle nadi ki maa hai." For those who do not understand Hindi, it's like forests are the mother to rivers. So, how important do you think is reforestation a tool for ensuring water security in the future? Maybe you could answer that.
No, I think we don't really have to go very far. The Narmada is a live example of what has changed in the last 5 years. If you go to Jabalpur, anybody who hasn't been there, a lot of Hindu religious rites get done at these various ghats. you could never ever touch that water. I mean, if somebody, even a Pandit gave me that, if you take this, you'll have salvation. I'm sorry, by taking it, I'm sure I'm going to die. I don't think I'm going to get any kind of salvation. Today, you can go to Jabalpur at that thing and you can pick up water and drink it. So the forestation effort, which has gone up of over 1 million trees, I think there's some phenomenal figure that has happened. And the second thing of addressing the culture, the Swachh Bharat campaign, there have been next to each village, easily about 500 or about a kilometer away from the river bank, they've created these toilets so that you don't go down and go out into the open. For religious practices, they have made ponds which have been made, which are next to a cluster of villages. So when I have to go and put my flowers inside the river, I don't go and sort of pollute the actual river body. I come and put it in this pond. So it's a matter of changing your mindset. And Narmada is a great prime example of how the water levels have gone up, where it is not a glacier-affected sourced river in this country. So it can be done. The Ken, the Betwa, all these can be looked at. Why not? Yeah, there is 100% a chance to get it right.
I'm sure many of you have questions because water concerns everybody. So if you could have your questions ready, if you have them, we could answer them. Before that, Mr. Rahman, how important is reforestation in Bangladesh? Is the government policies good enough to address the commitments in the NDC to the Paris Agreement?
Actually, this is a very difficult to answer this question. But actually, I also agree that we need to reforestation and forestation for Paris Agreement and also agreement, and also it's related with the water preservation system. I think in Bangladesh we have now still 17% of the forest coverage, but we target it in the government also target it to 25% will cover the forest within 2030. So our government also high priority to plant or also make the forest area coverage, increase the coverage of the forest area, and it's also related with the water conservation system. Thank you.
Well, so we have a lot of interesting observations. We basically share the same problems here in India and in Bangladesh. And we also look at the similar kind of solutions ahead. And one thing that Lieutenant General Sahni stressed upon is the behavioral change, which is, of course, very important in reducing the 40 to 50% water that is wasted that we saw in the slideshow earlier. A lot of our supplied water is getting lost because of dripping and leakage. So I think that could go a long way in addressing the water problem. And then, of course, with climate change aggravating the situations across the country, maybe we need much more interventions in terms of reforestation. Maybe we need more community water centers to be set up. With that, shall we take questions, if there are any questions?
Thank you so much to all the panelists. And Sir General Arun, you're really doing great work. Thank you so much for that. I'm just, in the earlier morning session, like one of the points that we didn't have time to mention was this water or irrigation during my sharing time. So since we are having this session again, I waited for it. So one of the points that I wanted to mention was doing the planning together with the community. For any kind of design and planning, it should be done with the community. Because ultimately, when we talk about all these effects, who is suffering is the people living in the rural area, and who is suffering is the women. Because women are the cultivators, women are the farmers, and women actually are the main actor in all this kind of suffering, actually. So because of that, like what I wanted to point out was that how can we design a better design, planning, inclusive kind of a planning. That is one thing I wanted to say, because when you talk about a policy, example like in Nagaland, there are departments like land resource or different kind of department who are bringing monoculture kind of cropping, which is also one of the reasons why our rivers are drying up, and which is one of the reasons why many things are happening. So in this kind of a situation, how can we plan in a better way, which is more inclusive, and how can we, as a small NGO or whoever, can voice our voice in such a way that, that the designing and planning can be more inclusive with women and everybody. Yes, so that I wanted to just put it. Thank you.
No, I think what you said, I think the lady of the house, the woman in India, and maybe across the world, is actually the catalyst for change. If you change, the system will change. And let me tell you, in all houses, the wife is actually the field marshal in the house. I could be a general outside. The field marshal is the lady. So I think anywhere, if today you want social change in this country, if the women of the house decide or the village decide that this has to be done, I'm sure it will happen. And I think this is where you can come in. I feel today, see, Nagaland has another unique problem. Unlike what Arunachal has, it's got rock structures. Assam has rock faces. Yours is hardly any rock structure. It's very, very limited. It's all soft soil. So the problem that happens on landslides there is that you lose a system of functioning immediately the minute you have a landslide there. So I think what you can do is where those collective ponds and collective capabilities that existed, this collective responsibility of the village to ensure that the water storage systems that existed or can now be made in addition to be able to arrest what you get in the rainwater or in other time can actually be looked at very seriously. And maybe that's one of the areas where you all really need to look at, because the problem in Nagaland is a little unique to the rest of the states of the Northeast as far as the soil content is concerned. But you're absolutely right. I think you're the boss. If you decide, it'll roll.
Absolutely.
I'd like to add a few words on this issue. It's okay? Okay. Basically, we are not much concerned about the water issues. We are now using too much water that will not needed. So basically, in my comments, that we can develop a plan that we can reuse the water, connect with the irrigation, and also every day we clean the different things, and we wastage the water. This water we can also connect with the agriculture sectors. So we need to develop this kind of model that we can reuse the water again and again. So it can be another way to solve this problem. So women also can be reduce the much more time. Thank you.
No, I think you go through any military cantonment in the Northeast. Today, there are two sets of water lines that function. One comes through the sewage treatment plant, which is used for greening and for cleaning purposes or whatever you need to do other than the drinking purposes, including it goes into your, for what is used in the toilets for your ablutions. You have a system, which we have done. And I mean, I was, in the last appointment, I was looking after 43 say cantonments across the country in that part of the world where I was. But here when I was looking at from Arunachal right up to Tripura. All military cantonments have this two system of untreated, unprocessed water utilized for other utilities which you require, including for washing and cleaning and for other purposes. And for drinking and for others, you have a separate line of water. So you're already carrying that out. And I think what Ranjit had talked about, the pollutants, I think the biggest challenge in Assam is the large amount of, I would say, the iron content or the fluoride content that happens. I mean, when I spent my time here as a brigadier, I actually developed a problem with my system, my digestive system, and I had to get operated later on. The reason is because of the content. And all military cantonments have 2 levels of deionization plants in all the cantonments. You go anywhere, there could be a small establishment anywhere in the Northeast, it's got that system. So I think what we really need to do is to start looking at good ways and right methodologies of development, like it's happening in Nagaland. Just to give an idea about Kohima. We have in the army also, you've got the sewage lines and the water lines. Unfortunately, over a period of time, because of haphazard construction, you suddenly had a sewage line which is going above a water line. Everything has a life. So 30 years down the line, there was a leakage from that. It went into the water stream, and that is happening in Kohima and in those areas. So I think this concern for ensuring that you have a system in the city where the sewage lines are laid separately. A sewage line should always be below a water line. It can never be above a water line. I mean, that should be the first guiding principle. And then you have a system by which you decide how it's going to be laid out so that you don't have these problems of health, which again then adds on to the whole agony of shortage of water.
Thank you, Lieutenant Lieutenant Sahni, and thank you, Mr. Rahman. I think water is a conversation that can go on forever, but obviously we don't have the time now. I think we could end it here with all the interesting observations that we have had from our distinguished panelists about the problems that we share in the Ganga Brahmaputra basins, as well as the kind of solutions we look at in the future. So thank you very much. Thank you, Balipara Foundation, for focusing on water as one of the team areas for this rural futures. Thank you very much.